Fear is the only enemy, and it's not outside you. It's a pattern that anyone can trigger within and anyone can change. A decision made from fear is almost always the wrong decision, because when you make a decision based on fear, you're living in a world of scarcity of some sort. Would people rather be happy or outraged today? The overall population. You go online, you know that people want to be outraged, but why? Which human needs are met the minute you get really angry? Certainty. So it's because they're so fearful. They're so fearful, and they've been trained to be fearful because the fastest way to control a population is fear. Now, when you're feeling really uncertain, most people value certainty as a survival instinct. Then the other one is significance. How significant are you when you're ranting about how messed up somebody else is? 0 to 10, where would you put it? Yeah, maybe a 15. I would agree with you. So the two things they fear most, I'm completely uncertain what's going to happen, and I'm not enough. I get rid of both of those by ranting, and it works, unfortunately. The only problem is it works in the moment. So it's like sugar. Sugar will make you feel good in the moment. But then what happens, an hour and a half later? Boom, you plummet. And that's what happens to relationships because of this anger. This is what happens to a community because of this anger. They are angry, so they don't have to feel scared. They feel like they're not enough, and they're totally uncertain about their life. Fear is what stops everybody from having the quality of their life. It isn't just stopping your business, it stops the quality of relationship. All you got to do is trade fear for faith. You were born with faith. It's already there. I'll prove it to you. How do you drive down a street with nothing but a yellow line dividing you from crazies who fall asleep, who are drunk, or don't pay attention, or are texting and cross those lines, and there's nothing protecting you but a yellow line? And yet you still get up and drive your car. Why? Because the alternative is to have no life. But if you're a leader, you might be afraid, but you don't let fear stop you. That's courage. That's faith. It means you feel it, but do it anyway because there's something that matters to you more than your fear. So if you have a mission, the game changes. The way we take dreams and make them real is we push through everything that other people give up about. And how do we do that? There's a part of you that will make that push. It just needs to be the part you nurtured more. Whatever you feed gets bigger, gets stronger. So you got to feed the best part of yourself every day. You got to demand the best part of you. You got to not settle for less than you can be or do or share or create or give. You got to not tolerate the stuff you used to tolerate in yourself. That doesn't mean you're inhuman. It doesn't mean that you don't have bad moments. It just means they're moments. They're not days, weeks, months, and years. It's not that you never come down. It's not that you never get knocked down. It's that you get up quickly and keep moving forward. If you keep moving forward, you will achieve whatever you dream. But you got to keep moving forward. And what will hold you back is only one thing: fear. Fear you're not enough. Fear you don't know enough. You don't have to know enough. And whether you're enough or not, something loved you enough to give you the gift of life, a beating heart in your chest that you did not earn. Something in this universe, call it God, call it the universe, call it whatever you want to call it. Something expects you to become something more. That's why it feels so good to become more, to give more, to do more, to shape more, to break through, to overcome your fears, to strengthen yourself. And most will miss that incredible nectar of growth and expansion and contribution and meaning and impact and achievement because they let their fear dominate them. It's okay to have the fear. What we got to do is to be able to get beyond it and know it's just fear and not let ourselves come up with a story, because the story that protects you from your fear is also the story that imprisons you. Everyone on earth has two primary fears. Jot them down. Fear number one, we're not enough. We're all afraid at times we're not enough. You may not be feeling that right now if your life matches your expectations, but that won't last. Something will change in your environment, financially, in a relationship, in business, in the economy, in yourself, in your body, in your emotions, and you won't feel like you're enough. Now, not feeling enough is not that horrible, but it's the deepest fear we have with someone that we really love. It's one of the worst feelings because it leads to the deepest fear, the second fear. We're afraid if we're not enough that we won't be loved. And you thought, now I have to do something to survive because you know for you to survive, I need someone to put their needs ahead of mine. They got to love me. So now you learn to do something to be enough to be loved. There's a part of you that'll always be fearful. Just don't let it be in charge. And there's a part of you that is bigger than any fear. There is a part of you that is immutable. There is a part of you that is everlasting. It's beyond the mind. It's beyond the body. You might call it soul. You might call it spirit. You might call it essence. When that part of you is activated, there's something you want to serve bigger than you. There's a different level of emotion. And emotion is the fuel that drives all of this. You have to be willing to feel things you don't want to feel and push through them. Trust that you're ready and put yourself into it, and you will be amazed by what your spirit, soul, and psychology will find a way to make happen when you put yourself on the line. Progress is what makes you feel alive. As long as you find a way to make progress, the game is totally engaging. The game of life, the game of business, the game of relationship, the game of parenting, the game of friendship, the game of spiritual growth. But it requires, very simply, a new standard within yourself. 10 years from now, you will surely arrive. The question is where? The question is who will you be? What will your legacy be even at that stage? What's the magic that changes our life? The right emotions. They're either brakes or accelerators, aren't they? Fear is the brake, and our beliefs are what guide us. So it might be useful to just decide what you're going to begin to believe. Like, everything happens in my life for a reason. Everything is life happening for me, even though it may look like life's happening to me. It's the difference between the manager of circumstances and the creator of an extraordinary life. You get to decide what you want to be. How many of you have a part of you that will not be defeated? How many have a part of you that will not give up? How many got a part of you that will not be denied? That's the part that needs to be in charge.
The technique I'm about to share with you is something we call exposure. Yes, exposure is the one best simple technique to overcome fear. But before you brush it off as something you've heard before, let's dive deep into what exposure truly means and how it can radically transform your relationship with fear. Exposure, at its core, means confronting the very thing you fear. It's about taking that fear, holding it in your hands, and looking at it directly in the face. It's simple, but not always easy. You see, the natural tendency when we're afraid is to avoid the situation or escape it. But what happens when we avoid our fears? They grow stronger. The more we run from them, the more power they have over us. How exposure works. Now let's break down how exposure works. When you voluntarily expose yourself to the thing that scares you, you begin to realize two key things. The situation is not as threatening as you thought. You are more capable of handling it than you realized. By putting yourself in the feared situation, you give your brain the chance to reevaluate the level of threat. Over time, as you continue to expose yourself to the fear in small, manageable doses, your anxiety starts to decrease. This is known as habituation, a process where the fear response diminishes as we become more familiar with the source of our fear. I know what you're thinking, easier said than done, and you're right. Facing your fears can be incredibly daunting. But here's the beautiful part, you don't have to dive in head first. The secret to successful exposure is to do it gradually in small steps that you can handle. Step-by-step guide to using exposure. Let me guide you through how you can use exposure to overcome any fear you might have. I want you to think of a fear you have right now. Maybe it's speaking in public, like what I'm doing right now. Maybe it's starting that business you've been dreaming about. Or perhaps it's something as simple as driving on a busy highway. Whatever it is, keep that fear in your mind as we go through these steps. Step 1, identify your fear. The first step is to clearly identify what it is that you are afraid of. Get specific. Is it the fear of failure? The fear of judgment? The fear of the unknown? Write it down. By naming your fear, you take the first step in confronting it. When fear is vague, it seems larger and more insurmountable than it actually is. By identifying it, you start to take away some of its power. Step 2, break it down. Once you've identified your fear, break it down into smaller, more manageable parts. Let's say you have a fear of public speaking. The idea of speaking in front of hundreds of people might seem terrifying. But what if you broke that down into smaller steps? For instance, speaking in front of a mirror, recording yourself speaking on video, speaking in front of a small group of friends, speaking to a larger group in a safe environment. Each of these steps is a small, manageable exposure that gradually builds up your confidence. Step 3, start small. The key to effective exposure is to start small and work your way up. Begin with something that causes a low level of anxiety. Using the public speaking example, you might start by speaking in front of the mirror. Yes, it might feel awkward, but it's a safe environment. You're only exposing yourself to a small dose of fear. Practice this step until you feel more comfortable, and then move to the next level. Step 4, embrace discomfort. When you expose yourself to fear, you're going to feel uncomfortable. That's normal. In fact, it's necessary. The goal is not to eliminate discomfort, but to learn to sit with it and realize that you can handle it. When you embrace discomfort, you weaken fear's grip on you. Remind yourself that discomfort is a sign of growth. Step 5, reflect and learn. After each exposure, take a moment to reflect. How did it go? What did you learn? How did the reality compare to the fear you had built up in your mind? Often you'll find that the experience was not nearly as bad as you expected. Each exposure provides you with valuable insights and helps you build resilience. Step 6, repeat and expand. The magic of exposure lies in repetition. The more you practice confronting your fear, the less intimidating it becomes. Gradually, you'll expand your comfort zone, moving on to bigger challenges. Over time, you'll notice a remarkable shift. What once terrified you now feels manageable, even empowering. My personal experience with exposure. Now, let me share a personal story to illustrate the power of exposure. A few years ago, I had a debilitating fear of public speaking. Yes, believe it or not, the person standing in front of you today was once terrified of speaking in front of an audience. Every time I thought about giving a speech, my palms would sweat, my heart would race, and my mind would go blank. I avoided speaking opportunities like the plague. But then I learned about exposure. I decided to give it a try. I started small. I began by recording myself speaking on my phone. It felt awkward and uncomfortable, but I pushed through. After a few weeks, I moved on to speaking in front of a mirror, then to my close friends. Each time, the fear lessened. Slowly but surely, I worked my way up to speaking in front of small groups, then larger audiences. And now, here I am, speaking to you today. Exposure changed my life. It taught me that fear is not a barrier, it's a guide. It's a signal pointing you toward areas of growth. By exposing yourself to fear, you not only diminish its power, but you also build confidence and inner strength. The science behind exposure. Now, for those of you who love a bit of science, let's delve into why exposure works. When you expose yourself to a feared situation, your brain releases stress hormones like adrenaline, which activate the fight or flight response. However, when you stay in that situation and nothing catastrophic happens, your brain starts to rewire itself. It learns that this situation is not as threatening as it initially thought. Over time, this rewiring reduces the intensity of the fear response, making you more comfortable with the situation. Psychologists call this process desensitization. It's the basis of many therapeutic techniques for anxiety and phobias. By systematically exposing yourself to your fears in a controlled way, you desensitize your mind and body, allowing you to confront previously overwhelming situations with greater ease. In conclusion, take that first step. So, there you have it, the best simple technique to overcome fear exposure. It's not a magic pill. It's not a one-time fix. It's a practice. It's a commitment to facing your fears one small step at a time. And the beauty of it is that anyone can do it. It doesn't require special skills or resources, just a willingness to step into discomfort and grow from it. As you leave here today, I want to challenge you to take that first step. Identify one fear you have and think about how you can expose yourself to it in a small, manageable way. Remember, the journey of overcoming fear is not about eliminating it, but learning to dance with it. The more you practice, the more you'll realize that fear is not a monster to be avoided, but a companion guiding you toward growth and new possibilities. Thank you for listening, and I wish you courage and strength on your journey to overcoming fear.